welcome to Transatlantic Watch Party, a TikTok live / podcast. I am Cara, and this is
Dan. I think you can just let me say I am Dan. You have to say this. I will say it. I promise.
We watch TV. Dan's TikTok handle is Dan Watches Movies, so this is slightly off his beaten track.
I was thinking about adjusting it to Dan Watches Movies and other things too.
You could. I think it's funny because my handle is A Quiet Life with Me, but whenever I look at anything or write anything, it just comes up as Cara McLean. So my handle doesn't mean anything anyway. I could change that if I wanted to.
Yeah.
And we are currently watching Pan Am because we were watching 911. That is on its mid-season, ridiculously long break. Because other things I'm watching that are on mid-season breaks come back mid or late January. And 911 doesn't come back until the middle of March. So I don't know what's going on with that.
Budget cuts. I was suspecting budget cuts. They had the amount of episodes cut, so they have to have longer periods. And they probably chose, I bet you those other shows are going to have another break later on. Whereas I bet you 911 goes all the way from when they resume to the end of the season. So we're not going to get another break. But I bet you other shows will do that. Like there's like little like 2 or 3 week breaks here and there to try and make it up. But 911 is going to go all in. So
I hope that happens. I'd be really if they have to like miss 1 week because of something that's happening, that's okay. But yes, I remember, I think The Rookie last season had like these sporadic 2-week breaks. So, and that's why it hasn't started yet. The new season of The Rookie isn't starting until the end of January. And I think they're maybe only going to do one maybe short break and we'll get the whole season relatively quickly. So I look forward to that if that's indeed what is happening. So yeah, Pan Am fit perfectly in the number of weeks we had in this mid-season break of 911. So this week we watched 2 episodes, and we watched number 4, Eastern Exposure, and number 5, One Coin in a Fountain. So start with number 4, I guess. How did you feel about that episode, Dan?
I will say first, I like both episodes because they're both kind of Ted-centric episodes, and I'm starting to really like Ted. I think Ted might be my favorite character in the show. We learned more about Ted's background in this episode. So we learned that he comes from kind of a wealthy family. His father owns an aeronautics company. I assumed it was some sort of Lockheed Martin kind of company that makes airplanes and has government contracts. And so he's he's loaded basically. So he's had a very well-to-do upbringing.
Yes, and that was as is always the way in Pan Am. That was dripped through to us, the information throughout the episode. So you always start with just some like throwaway line that you don't really think means anything, and then it becomes the crux of the entire episode. And then by the end of it, you're like, oh,
and this one, I was confused because Ted at first, like there was these flashbacks with Ted, but then and as far as like the present day story, it didn't seem like Ted was doing much. Like he kept fiddling with the TV. So by the way, they're in Rangoon. They get diverted to Rangoon, and we're led to believe that it's Kate's agent friends who did this. They need Kate to get to Rangoon.
I don't know how they have the power to do that. Like, who else is like on their books that can shift this entire crew? They were meant to be going to Iceland, and all of a sudden they're doing Rangoon and Jakarta. Like, I don't know who he's got on the books.
He must know somebody up top. So anyway, they go, which is a fun adventure for a lot of them because what's her name has not been there before. I have the names here, so I keep looking up to the side. Laura's never been there before. Of course, she's never been anywhere. This is her first time as a stewardess, right? So she's excited to be there. And but of course, Maggie has been there before and is like an expert in everything Jakarta. Like she knows this town, right?
Yes,
it's crazy.
I just wrote down Maggie knows everyone. Like, when they go out, her and Maggie go out and she sits down to play, I think she called it Black Dominoes. He knows the guy who's like dealing the match, you know, And he's like, I've been on a winning streak. And she went, yeah, that's because I haven't been here. And like, she just knows everyone. And also, she's into cockfighting. That came as a surprise.
That was pretty funny.
So, and her and Laura were getting closer and closer during the episode. Because at the beginning, like, she said something, I can't remember what she said to Laura, and Kate sort of looked a bit miffed. And then she made another sort of dig at Laura, and Kate looked upset about it. And I was like, is this Maggie's getting jealous? Because, no, not Maggie, sorry. Kate's getting jealous because when Maggie's like, she's joking around with Laura, and so Kate's sort of losing her best friend.
I guess, although like by default, because they're sisters, right? Like they kind of pair up all the time whenever they go anywhere. But because like at first Kate's the only one she knows, right? But now she's starting to get to know Maggie and the other crew and sort of become friends with them. So yeah, I think that's, and yeah, Kate is jealous. Kate is weirdly jealous throughout. Like she's weirdly angry at Laura for taking the camera, which I thought was strange given the circumstances. Like, oh, I just thought I'd take the camera and take some pictures. Like,
yeah,
video.
Why didn't Kate even take the camera? So this was, which the reason that they were rerouted, as I would say, to Rangoon was because of Kate. Because Kate had to keep an eye out, was all she was told. And I was like, I would hate being a spy. I just wouldn't be able to do it. I'd be like, could I have just a little bit more context? And then a guy gives her a camera and says, get this to Jakarta. Again, no information about where or who or why. And so when she then gets to Jakarta, she has to send a telegram to find out what to do with it, which seems ridiculous. And she doesn't take the camera with her. And it turns out that the place the camera has to go is the shop across the road from the telegraph office. And she doesn't have the camera, goes back to the hotel, finds out Laura has it, so she can't get it anyway. So then she's horribly late to her handoff. She's like 6 hours late to her handoff. And the whole thing seemed very bizarre.
Yeah, I thought so too. I thought it was like, she's not getting any information. I was confused throughout a lot of it because the whole part about where do I go, and the guy points down the street, it's right there, and I'm like, what do you mean? Because she had sat there forever. She basically makes this guy stay there and wait for the reply to come in. She's got to wait forever. That's gotta be weird though. Hey, like, how do you even know that there's gonna be a reply to this? Communicating.
She had to wait for a reply, and I was like, isn't she flying again soon? Like what is this guy doing? Why did it take so long for him to get back to her? And also, I was confused because I hadn't realized that she hadn't taken the camera with her, because I would have taken the camera with me, so it didn't even cross my mind that she didn't have it. So when he pointed out the place she was meant to drop it, and he was like, oh, it's there, and he was very sneaky. He was like, you give me money and I tell you where it is, and it turns out it's across the road. Very good. She, like, doesn't go there, and I was momentarily like, where's she going? Because it never occurred to me that she didn't have the camera.
Why would you just take it with you, right? Exactly. Yeah, and then
and if it's that important, keep it with you, for goodness sake.
Yeah, and I don't blame Laura for taking it. Like, if you see a camera, got a new camera, let's take it out and take some nice photos for her. And it was like, it seems to be, and this happens again in the next episode too, where they're like, wish I had a camera, and then the girl pulls out a camera. Having a camera back then was like a kind of not a luxury, but it was like a novelty. It's like not everybody had a camera, right? It was like something that you had to. Yeah. So being able to take pictures of things was kind of a fun thing to do. So I don't know.
As it turns out, when we see the photos at the end, because we don't know that Laura's taken any pictures, although obviously she would have done. And then Kate meets her American handler, and he like shows her the pictures that Laura took, and she's like, I hope this didn't ruin anything. And I was like, Laura is an excellent photographer.
There's one really good shot of Kate, right? She takes one good shot of her, like kind of like a candid shot. That was really nice.
There was a beautiful shot of Maggie dancing on a table or something. There was a really like atmospheric shot of a guy sitting outside like a shop. It was just beautiful. And then there was this like hazy romantic shot of Kate looking into the distance. I was like, Laura needs to get an agent. She's good.
Dead. Stewardessing. Yeah.
So yeah, that storyline sort of threw me a bit because I was like, this is the first time where I think this is ridiculous.
Well, it seems so sketchy as far as the information they're giving her, right? And you're like, this does not seem like it would be, you're going to have to give me more than get this to Jakarta, right? Like, and then do what? Like, it could have been, get this to this address, like give her like a piece of paper with an address or something, like something a little bit more.
They always give her half the information she needs. And I get that that's, in case she's caught, then she can't tell anyone anything, like I get it. And she's very smart and she can think on her feet. That's why they have her. But yeah, it just seems absolutely bonkers to me. I must admit, episode 4 was the first episode that I didn't fully buy into. It was the first one where I thought, most of this looks really fake. Like it looks like a set and it looks like a green screen.
Okay.
And I think it's because when they got to Jakarta in particular, it felt like a set. As opposed to when they were in Paris and, Italy and wherever they were. That, you've got these wide open shots. And then we got to Jakarta and it was like, we saw like one street over and over again, and I was like, "This just feels
interesting,
a bit cheaper." But I did, going back to the Ted storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the fact that I didn't put it together until he was fiddling with the TV for a long time because it was light when he started and it was dark when he finished.
Yeah, but it was like we did.
He wanted to be an astronaut.
Right. And this was like it kind of like we didn't get any lead up to it. It's like kind of I think at the beginning of the episode he seemed kind of grumpy and preoccupied about something. And then he gets into the hotel. He's like, "Where's your TV?" And he's like, "Let me fix it." He gets all obsessed with the TV and starts fiddling with it. And then we realize he's been doing this all day. He's been trying to fix his TV. When Laura comes across him and finds him doing that, and she starts helping him by holding the antenna and stuff like that. And he's trying to watch one of the Gemini launches. Is it a Gemini? Did you write it down? I didn't write it down.
I don't think it was Gemini. And I don't think it was Apollo, and I don't know what else they ever
Mercury.
had.
Mercury was the other one. So anyway, I was all about that stuff. I would totally be like that too. I loved that space stuff, right? That was so exciting. And just to kind of be able to watch that. First of all, it's a miracle that at that time that he could just watch that from across the world. Like that they would be broadcasting it in a way that he could pick it up where he is, and it is a pretty big deal. But yeah, we get the backstory about how there was some kind of an accident. He was a test pilot. He was a naval aviator. He was a test pilot, which is how you get into the astronaut.
Yes.
Like this is a time where they were not letting scientists go. This is like only test pilots and people who are willing to risk their lives by doing crazy shit are going to be able to do that. So this is his way to become an astronaut. And so there's
I wrote down way towards the end, I suddenly realized, I was like, oh yeah, test pilot to astronaut pipeline. That's why he was a test pilot. Because at the beginning of the show, when you see them in the cockpit, they're talking about Sputnik. So they're obviously, and I sort of thought that was just a throwaway conversation. But again, it leads in. It turns out to be the whole point of the episode.
Yeah.
But that was it, and I forgot about space altogether until he said he was watching the launch, and then I was like, oh, test pilot, astronaut, I get it.
Yeah, a really good movie about that is The Right Stuff, of course, which is based on a book by Tom Wolfe, and that is all about the Mercury program, which is these are the first guys. That might have been what he was watching. This is 1963, I think. Yeah, 1963. So yeah, this might have been before, certainly before Apollo.
I think Mercury is right. That I was trying to think. I thought it began with an M, so I think you're right. And it was the first guy who'd been in space in like 10 years. So
Well, it was ever. It would have been ever. This would have been like either first person into space or first person to do a full orbit or something like that. Like it wasn't
American, maybe, because they
like,
do talk about how Russia beat them to it.
Russia beat them to that too. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they beat them to a few of the things. So yeah, but then we have like more kind of like building of this relationship between Ted and Laura. I guess this is supposed to, and we got more of that in the next episode as well. So I guess they're supposed to be a kind of a maybe romantically involved at some point.
I think they're the, well, I mean, I don't know, because Dean and Colette are possibly the same, but they're sort of the will they won't they of the show, Laura and Ted.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel a little more sympathetic towards Ted now that I know he had to kind of deal with that. And we learned, basically what we learned, sorry, I got sidetracked, is that he was in an accident. He feels there was instrumentation failure, some kind of failure of the aircraft that caused the crash. They deemed it pilot error because his dad's company made the aircraft. They didn't want to admit to the fault and lose their contract with the government. So his dad sells him out. His dad says, no, sorry, you got to do this. It's okay. It's because his dad never really believed in him. His dad didn't think he would ever become an astronaut. It's like, it's fine. You just be able to go be a pilot for Pan Am. That's a great job. And meanwhile, this is the only way this guy could ever become an astronaut, and now it's gone.
Absolutely heartbroken. I was so upset on his behalf when we got that reveal at the end of the episode that his dad was like, "Don't worry, we've taken care of the fault." And he's like, "So you admit there was a fault? Then you need to go back to the Navy and tell them." And he's like, "No, we don't, because we've got a contract renewal coming up." And I was like, "Oh, capitalism." Ruined everything.
Right. But it also gave him everything in his life. Like he grew up at the benefit of this company that his dad owned, right? So
because also we have this ongoing story between him and Dean, which is how did Dean get to be a pilot? How did he get to be a captain before hundreds of other qualified
74, I think it was. It was like it was a very specific number of pilots who were ahead of him in seniority, right? And Ted knows this. Ted counted.
That became a big issue between the two of them for that episode, and ended in Ted punching Dean in the face. And then at the very end of the episode, we find out that because I think he could have gone straight in as a captain, because his dad knows the guy who runs Pan Am. So he was like, I'll talk to him, and he was like, no, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this on my own, So he's still in the other seat. He's not a captain yet. And he finally runs into Dean, and they're like still not talking and stuff when they come off the plane. And Dean says, hey, look, this is how I did it. And he got stuck in the elevator. He got stuck in the lift with the guy who runs Pan Am, and but essentially, literally did an elevator pitch to him. And I loved that. I was like, oh my God, it's an actual elevator pitch. He got 11 minutes and he did it.
Yeah, he pitched him and said, you should be, I mean, he made a good point. You should be promoting younger pilots who are more familiar with the newer planes, and all these old guys are blah, blah, blah. They don't know anything. And he made a good convincing argument. And he said, okay, you're a captain. It was, what was his name? I don't remember. The name, Juan Tripp. His name is Juan Tripp, is the head of Pan Am.
Yes.
And he gets stuck in the elevator.
Kind of a great name for a guy in charge of like a travel company.
I know.
Juan Tripp. I mean, it's just brilliant.
I thought it was a joke. I was like, when I first found that out, I'm like, no, it's not. That's not really his name. But yeah, there's. What's his name?
It's like he grew up and he was like, well, there's nothing else I can do. Not with this name. Gotta have this job. Could I go back to something that was said at the very beginning? Mm-hmm. One of the first things you see is the stewardesses coming off from a flight. And Maggie's saying, hey, does anyone want to go out? And Colette says, oh, that skinny boy who can't carry a tune. And she's talking about Bob Dylan because he's not a big deal yet. And Maggie's like, you wait, he's going to be famous.
That's timely. We have a movie out right now.
Yes.
Starring for Timothée Chalamet. Probably will win an Oscar, I'm sure, for his performance as Bob Dylan. Which I'll go see that. Maybe I won't see it in the theaters. I might wait till it comes to streaming, but it seems interesting. For sure.
Yeah, and then it will be put in the Golden Globes as like a musical, and I'll be like, it's not a musical.
Well, it depends. It depends on if they do it like they did the Elton John movie, then it is a musical. right?
Yeah.
Wasn't that was a musical? But if they did it like the Elvis movie, which I hated, then it's not a musical. I didn't like that movie at all.
Wait, which one did you just say was the musical?
I said the Elton John was a musical, but
Yeah.
the Elvis one was not.
Oh, the Elvis one. Sorry, I thought you said Elton again. That's that yes, I admit I haven't seen either of those. The Elvis one does not appeal to me at all, despite the Baz Luhrmann of it all. I do like Baz Luhrmann. But the thing is, like, I say that, and I'm going, do I anymore though? Because I loved his early stuff, Romeo and Juliet, Strictly Ballroom, Moulin Rouge, and then I never saw Australia.
I didn't see that either. I forgot about that one.
You know, and I
Totally forgot about that.
haven't seen Elvis, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't say that now. I used to really love Baz Luhrmann.
Yeah, I want to see Australia. I totally forgot that was a movie.
That was him, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Nicole Kidman. It's like the 3 most famous people from Australia. Let's make a movie about our country. Okay, and they made a movie.
And then, because I think it was the year that Hugh Jackman hosted the Oscars.
Okay,
He had that joke about, Kate Winslet, she's British, she's playing a German, nominated for an Oscar. Hugh Jackman, Australian, playing an Australian, hosting. It's like, yeah, you're not showing off your acting chops in that one, are you?
No.
I'm just looking through my notes because there were minimal. Maggie knows everyone. She's into cockfighting. I've talked about that.
Yeah. She
yes.
gets closer. She gets closer to Laura. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Well, it's only because they have that moment where they're coming into Hong Kong and there's all these crosswinds, and Dean has never landed in Hong Kong before, and it's a very difficult approach, and the plane is veering left and right, and it's an absolute nightmare, and the stewardesses are like moving bottles so that they don't get thrown all over the cabin, and Ted is like, I can do it, and Dee's like, I'll do it, I'm the bloody captain, I'll do it. And he lands that plane, and I wrote down, he landed that plane almost as well as Athena Grant. If Bobby Nash had been standing at the end of that runway on top of a fire truck, he'd have stopped this far.
I don't know that it should have been abort at the point of with that approach where the guy's like, what's the crosswind? And what's his name in the back says the whatever knots. And he's like, 20 knots, abort. He's like, no. I'm like, you should have aborted, man. It almost got blown right off the runway there, right at the last minute. And he brings it back in and lands it. So I would not be happy to learn how close they came to crashing.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, until it goes wrong, you don't know that you've done something. You can be as cocky as you like until, something goes wrong and you kill everybody on board.
Yeah.
And I feel like he felt very much like he had something to prove to Ted, because Ted definitely thinks he's a better flyer than Dean is, because he's had all this crazy experience doing test flying where you're just there to, as he says, you're there to push the plane to its limits. You are there to discover what the limits are. So yeah, Dean was definitely on one there to be like, no, I can do this. And all the people in the back have no idea that this like dick measuring contest is going on in the cockpit.
The whole way these guys run their cockpit is kind of informal and a bit lax. Like in the second episode, that we're going to talk about the next one, just leave the cockpit door open. Anyone can just stroll up and say hi. It's very, very relaxed in this.
Yeah, and I think it's because they're closer in age.
Yeah.
Like by Sanjeev, I think it is, and Ted and Dean. They're all very close in age. Yeah. At the beginning of the episode, we see like an elder statesman pilot, a captain, sort of getting a dig in at Ted, and if he were the captain, I feel like the cockpit would be a very different place.
True. Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point. Because he probably runs it like nobody speak up, just be quiet, fly the plane. I mean, that's the safest thing to do if you're a pilot, to be fair.
Yeah, he's probably
focus on flying the plane. But
chain of command oriented,
Yeah.
like Dean says, in that cockpit, I am the captain and everything comes down to me. It's my call.
Yeah.
And I think that the other guy would have established that from the very beginning, and his, second in command would never even try to say something like that.
Now they did make up after all that because he did tell them the truth about being in the elevator with him on trip, and so now Ted knows, just blind luck that he was there. It's not anything else. He didn't get special treatment, really. Well, I kind of did, but it was an opportunity that he took, right? And so it was just his own thing. And then the other storyline between Laura and Kate. Now Kate is furious about Laura taking the camera. She I guess Laura's so upset about it that she moves out. She gets home. Kate gets home and there's a note and she's like, is there even a note? I don't remember if there was a note.
No. I was like, because Kate was really angry with her for not leaving a note when they were in Jakarta.
Right.
And so I thought, oh, she's left it because Kate buys her a camera and he's gonna make it up to her, and she goes and she's feeling really proud of herself because her American agent man says that he's gonna separate them because again he has a lot of power within Pan Am. I don't know you, but
yeah.
He thinks that Laura is, a
traction.
Yeah, and she's going to trip Kate up somehow.
She almost blew this mission, right? She almost blew it. Let's not have that happen again. Let's take her out of the equation, right? And Kate's like, no, it's okay. I can handle her. It's all good.
Yeah.
I don't want her to
she sort of sticks up for Laura. She's like, she's not dumb. She's perfectly capable of doing things by herself. And then she comes home and finds out that she is, in fact, perfectly capable of doing things by herself because she's moved out. But no, I don't think there is a note. And I was so horrified about that. And then, what? Is Maggie living in some sort of, upscale squat? What? There just seems to be people wandering around and, I don't know who's in there.
Well, I got the feeling, and we only saw it once before in the first episode, I think, when she's kind of running off to be flown to the airport there. Yeah. But it's kind of it's Greenwich Village. It's kind of beatnik style. She's kind of she probably hangs out in a little cafe wearing a beret and smoking cigarettes and listening to beat poetry. So I think that's what they're trying to show us there. There's probably people coming and going as they please. Maybe she probably lives there with 5 other people. That's how they can afford an apartment in Greenwich Village, wherever she lives. And so now Laura's just going to join them and become more worldly, more bohemian, so to speak.
Yep. She's going to come into her own, Laura. And that is the end of episode 4. So done that in a very timely fashion. Take about half an hour to do that one. Let's take half an hour to do episode 5.
Sweet.
So episode 5 is called One Coin in a Fountain, and it's sort of, they're going from place to place in this one. And what I find quite funny is they sort of take the same people on a flight, so that guy, Nico, and I was very excited because he was look, it's him from that thing. It's
me too.
He's from ER, so I got very excited.
Oh, okay. He's from Timeless for me. Timeless is a very short-lived TV show about time travel. It's a great show. And it was only 1 season, and he was the bad guy on Timeless. So that's how I knew him. So
he'd be such a good bad guy. I've not seen him be a bad guy.
I think he's a bad guy in this show. I'll get to that in a second.
No, I don't trust him. I don't trust him. So he's on the flight to London, and then he's on their flight to Monte Carlo, and I'm like, do these people just follow the plane around? Is this like a cruise but on a plane? Yeah, you can get these same people.
No.
So so the first thing we see is Laura trying to get her engagement ring back, and horrified to discover that a pawn shop would sell the thing she pawned.
Right, maybe not really understanding how pawn shops work, and there's a kind of a joke about that later in the episode, but really, you did not understand how pawn shop was.
I was surprised it was 60 days that she had.
I think it's pretty sad. It's been a long time since I pawned something, but I have pawned something. Never expecting to get it back, of course, because it's not the point of pawning something. You need the money. That's why you pawn it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So she pawned her engagement ring, and she wants to give it back to Greg, so that's the end of their relationship. And I was like, oh, I feel like you were very clear in Paris when you met that was done.
When he sort of tried to prize you and get you back, and you said no, thank you, and ran away, then that was like a very definitive like end of the relationship. I thought.
Yeah, they had a whole conversation, and he wished her well. I think it's nice that she wants to give him the ring back because that was his money that he'd saved for climbing Everest.
Yeah, I think she does say that, and so yeah, it does make it like she feels obligated, I guess, because of this financial. Now he can't go do what he wants to do, so she basically wants him to give him the ring back so he can go sell it and then go to Everest, I guess. So
that's very nice. I would want someone, if I broke off an engagement with somebody and I knew that they'd spent all their money, unless they were an absolute dick, which this guy wasn't, I would feel the same sort of obligation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'd think, oh, I get to keep the ring. He gave it to me. I don't think I feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to a weigh-in, which we haven't had for a long time.
And our friend wasn't there. We did not have the same weigh-in lady. I was looking for her.
No.
Like, oh no,
where's the bean lady?
It was a very nice lady. She was like, "Thank you." Yeah. Oh, I guess everyone's weight is looking good today. She's being nice.
And then we got Goran Visnich. I've probably said his name wrong. I'm terribly sorry. But that was very exciting. And yeah, and so they get to London, and we get a Kate spy moment again. So we get David Harbour, bonus David Harbour for Dan, and doing his English accent, and like all the girls are together, and she like goes, "Oh no, do you know what? It is chilly. I'm going to go and get my coat." So all the girls go, "Oh, shiz, I'll meet you there." And he's like, "Quick thinking," and I'm like, "Yeah, yes." Do you see all the other stuff she's done? If you give her half an instruction and then make her run around the world with it, I'm glad that she can think to make up an excuse. She needs to get her coat in chilly weather. Like, how poorly do you think of this woman?
Yeah. Well, obviously they don't think much of her, right?
Well, she's so expendable.
Well, they don't pay her, apparently. That's what we learned in that conversation. She's not getting paid? How could she not be being paid for this? Come on.
Yeah. I could not believe that they weren't paying her. I was horrified. So yeah, she's completely expendable, as they showed her when she was trying to get the girl out of Germany. Right. She learned how expendable she is, and they don't pay her, and they don't give her proper instructions. And yeah, I'm not a fan of them. I don't like it.
And so she gets her new mission, which is to get this guy. His name is Nico in the episode. The Goran Visnich. And he is like he's of no consequence. They make a point of saying they don't really care about him, but he can get her into this casino in Monte Carlo because they're going to end up in Monte Carlo. And then she's got to get the fingerprints of this woman who's dating the guy he goes with. Is that what it was? Okay, just making sure.
Very convoluted.
But she's basically trying to get her fingerprints, right? That's her one goal. And immediately I think, okay, and then easy, she's just got to grab a glass that she's held on to. And of course, later on, turns out to be a little more difficult. And I thought that they were very clever the way.
Even at the beginning, it's difficult because he has his eye on Maggie, or Maggie has her eye on him. And so from the episode previous, where Maggie and Kate are sort of gonna come to blows over Laura, you get this now extra level of antipathy between the two of them, because Kate realizes she's going to have to throw over Maggie in order to get this date to get into the casino.
Mm-hmm.
So it's another sort of like problem between her and Maggie. So I don't know if that's going to eventually, like later episodes, going to blow up somehow.
It should. I mean, the way he was looking at her when they're at that bar and they're like playing pool, and Maggie's like, I don't know how to play or something like that, and Kate's like, well, I do. Let's play. What do you want to play? 9 blah blah blah. She like knows everything about pool. She's awesome.
Taking her earrings off, you know.
This kicks ass. You know, she beats him, and then and she basically kind of steals him away. And Maggie's like, "What are you doing? Like, clearly I was with this guy, and you just go swooping in and taking him away. Like, what kind of dick move is that? Not fun."
What are you, a spy or something? Oh. Yeah. And we've skipped past the flight to London, which is the point that you were talking about, where they've left the cockpit door open. And
Right.
of course, a very beautiful woman happens to saunter in.
Yeah. She is very beautiful, and she is stopped by. They're talking about the race, Monte Carlo, of course, F1 racing, right? So I guess that's going to be happening while they're there. Is that what was going on? So that they're all talking about that, and she pops in, and she seems to know a lot about it, and they hit it off. And then I didn't seem to know it, like in that conversation, and then what's her name pops in and out and leaves them, and then comes back for tea, asks them for tea. But Ted says she was like going kind of flirting with Dean. I didn't really see that in that conversation very much. I thought she was going to be flirty with all of them, or was it?
Oh no, I saw her and Dean as being a potential item immediately.
Is that right? Okay, I must have missed that.
But
Yeah,
what I was most interested in was she kept talking about jujubes. Has anyone got jujubes? And I was like, what on earth is that? And then when Ted was like, when she's left, and he says to Dean, you should have fling with her, and I have, the magic weapon, and he pulls out a packet of jujubes, and I was like, is that how you say that?
no.
That's not how you say that.
Well, how I say that. Okay, here, let me tell you this. I've always my entire life called those jujubes, and in that spelling, Jube, and I've heard the term jujube in pop culture, in American cinema and TV and stuff, and I thought that was a different candy. I thought they were talking about something completely different. I didn't understand. I didn't see them talking about the same candy, just mispronouncing the name. I didn't get it. So I
always thought they were jujubes, and I was like, oh.
Well, they are jujubes. That's the name. That's what they're called. Jujube is just the way they said it back then, I guess, or something. But there are people who do still say jujubes. It's like people say Reese's cups. Reese's, Reese's. People in the southern states say Reese's. They definitely make a point of saying it like that.
But that would be Reese's Pieces, and that doesn't make any sense.
Does not, but that doesn't stop them from doing it.
We have arguments over here. We have a kind of pie pasty company called Ginsters or Ginsters.
Oh.
And I can't remember which one's right, but I do think that when I was at university, we got into such a row about it that we called the number on one of the packets just so that somebody say hello, welcome to, and then say the name of the company.
So you can hear it.
I can't remember. University was so long ago. I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, so that was interesting. But he does give him the jujubes, and then so he goes off to charm this lady. Pilot could just leave the plane and just go off and flirt with the passengers as much as he wants. So just
does he not have flying to do? I know Ted's good at his job, but still.
Yes. Anyway,
yep.
That's great.
So that was very funny. So yes, so they're in London, and she is getting along very well with Nico. Kate is. Maggie is peeved. Colette, who we don't see much of in these two episodes, so I felt very bereft. She has found a random French person in the pub in London, so they're just having a lovely conversation. And Laura's sort of been left on her own. Oh, and she has an issue with Ted. So they were getting along fine in Jakarta, but now there is something going on, and I really enjoyed, like I say, I like the way Panam sort of drips information through an episode. And they were doing sort of timeline jumps for the Ted and Laura story. So it was to do, because when you first see Ted in the episode, before they get on this flight to London, she's like, I don't need any help from you. You've helped enough. And I was like, what's that about? What happened in Jakarta that I missed? But I didn't miss anything. No. He was trying to help her get her ring back. And then, so through the episode, we get this back and forth of like her being angry with him now and us finding out why in the past. And it's because she managed to get the name of the guy who'd bought her engagement ring. And so she went to Harlem to meet him, and Ted was like, I'll come along. That's not safe. and so they end up in Harlem together, and Ted basically undercuts her ability to, what she thinks is her ability to get the ring back. Right. As he said, this guy's about to rip you off.
Yeah.
And so
he does. He totally does. He absolutely does. Like, he just could just shut up and be quiet, and she would have been fine.
Yeah, and also, it's not like he didn't get ripped off in the end.
No kidding, eh? But I really like the conversation they had in the subway on the way over there. Like, they start, like, she obviously tells him what's going on. Like, she wasn't going to at first, but then she tells him in the subway, she kind of explains it, and he's like, you know, he just kind of talks to her about the whole thing, and I just wrote down, I like Ted. I think he's a good guy. I think ultimately he is trying to do the right thing. He's selfish and kind of an idiot.
Yes. Because when he says at the end, he goes, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Maybe I am a bad guy. I'm like, yeah, you're a bad guy, Ted.
Yes, right. He's not this brilliant bald in the thing.
So I haven't come round to him quite yet, but I can see that they're trying to make me, and that's fine. I'll get there. But what I noticed on the subway, my favourite thing about the subway ride was her incredible subway stance. Because when I get on a subway, I like, you know, that's a wide stance, my man. I'm just like, my legs are just, because I'm going to wobble about all over the place. She was in heels and her feet were together. And she was standing, and I was like, wow, that is you've got an incredible core, young lady.
Well, she's on her feet all day as a stewardess. You know that. She's just
yes, she can, you know, she can probably walk through a good amount of turbulence. So yes, the subway might not be a shock to her system, but you know, I was very impressed with that.
Yeah. So they go back, and then Ted undercuts her. The guy won't sell her, or basically he won't sell her the ring back. She takes off. She's pissed off. But then we learn later on that Ted pawns his watch, and there's a hint to it. Oh, why don't you have your watch on, Ted? Like, we ever noticed Ted with a watch on, right? And like, I don't think we associated Ted with wearing like every man in the 60s wore a watch. It was very common, right? So anyway, but we learned he sold his watch, or maybe just traded it straight up for the ring.
I think that's why I say he got ripped off as well, because I'm sure a Rolex is worth way more than that engagement ring. Yeah. But he felt so bad about it. But the thing is, he says to Laura when she finds out, because he sees her towards the end of the episode, and they've been bickering with each other the whole episode, and he presents the ring to her, and she's like, why didn't you just tell me? And he was like, I was trying. And I'm like, not very hard. Like, you wanted to make it a moment, and you wanted, like, you could have just handed her the ring back.
Was that when, did he give it to her when she was at the fountain?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So that's where the one coin in the fountain thing is. She puts the coin in the fountain, and maybe she wishes to get the ring back, and then he shows up and gives her the ring.
She wishes to be able to, like, start over or something like that, and he's like, no. It's like, oh, Ted, you absolute scumbag.
Yeah. So then she gets to go back to
in a harmless way, but you know. And that, yes, and so we find out that he exchanged his Rolex for it. And the reason they have that conversation about the Rolex is because that senior vice president of Pan Am is on the plane, and we discover that his secretary, as in his mistress, is the hot woman, the Jujubes lady.
Now, was it clear that it's like his mistress, and that's, they all just kind of accepted that, right?
Well, they did talk about it in the cockpit. Yes. They had a conversation about it in the cockpit to make it abundantly clear that is his mistress.
Okay.
They were like, come on, she's a secretary, she wears a mink coat, she goes shopping in Harrods, and he flies her first class. Yeah. You know, so Ted is definitely getting at the fact that she's his mistress. And I do think that it's his mistress. And Sanjeev says, because Dean's like, I can't believe that, you know, I slept with his mistress. Like, I'm going to get sacked. And Sanjeev says, It could have been worse. You could have jujubeed his wife. And then Ted says, that is not worse. A wife is the block he grew up on. A mistress is where he's living now.
Awful. It's an awful thing to say, Ted.
And that's the kind of thing that makes me go, Ted!
Right, yes, that's right. Just when you think you're liking Ted, he says something like that. Yeah, and then but then I thought it was interesting when Dean tries to throw that back in her face later on and say, and then first, but he gets in the car with her, like he still likes her, he still wants to spend time with her, and he doesn't confront her right away about it. He gets into the I'm calling it the Ferris Bueller car because it's the same car from Ferris Bueller, and they go driving off, and it's a Ferrari, I believe. And then they have like they're taking pictures of their bare feet in the park of whatever they're doing. And then he asks her, and she's like, hey, you didn't say anything about this blatantly obvious thing, then that's on you. That, like, I thought most people, when they don't ask about this stuff, they don't want to know. And I thought she made a very good point about that, like, and I thought it was very well handled. And he's like, oh, yeah.
I thought she was good. I thought she was great. And the fact that, like, he'd lost his room key and he was like, oh, it's in the car. Okay. And the senior vice president is going to find it and I'm definitely going to lose my job. And he and he doesn't manage to get the key back. And he has a conversation with the senior VP and like, oh, it's all very tense. And then he goes back up to his room having got a spare key from the front desk and she's there like, do you need this? And I was like, I like her.
Yeah, I think we're going to see her come back, hopefully, in the next couple episodes. Because if he's a VP of Pan Am, you'd think she'd be around somewhere. If she's is she a secretary for real, or is it like...
I think she's not a secretary at all. I think he just says, oh, I'm flying with my secretary. Like, don't worry about it. But I just think she's doing the most with what she's got. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't have any complaints about that. So when we are when Dean gets into the car with this lady whose name we can't remember, that's terrible. Colette is looking at a very beautiful dress, and she's like, "Oh, it's 750 francs," and And again, it's one of those sort of moments where you're like, well, "What's this got to do with anything?" But then when it turns out that Maggie hasn't got that date to the casino, she is instead with the Irish guy that she randomly met in a pub who is now in Monte Carlo. Like, I don't know, these people are so jet set. And she's got a date with him. So Kate figures out that she can weasel her way into this casino if she can find out from the front desk when his car is being picked up. And I was like, this is why she has this side hustle, because it's not a job, because they're not paying her. This is why she has this voluntary position, because she was able to convince the guy not to tell her when the car was coming, because, he didn't believe her, but he then gave someone instructions in French that
that was very well done.
Time when the car was coming, and he was like, you don't speak French, do you? And she was like,
no, then she said it out loud in English. 8 o'clock, gotcha. Wink, wink, wink. She is both the worst spy and then the best spy, because then later in the episode, I thought she did some great spy work as far as like getting this person to take her gloves off and stuff like that. That was very clever then. And then later on,
when she turns up, she's wearing that dress.
Yes, but so did she buy that dress then to go?
Yeah, because she says to Laura, "How much money do you have?" And I thought she just wanted to take money to the casino.
That's what I thought too.
She was buying the dress.
Oh wow, jeez, they must make a lot of money as a stewardess, eh? Must have been good money. She's buying rings back, like she's buying her engagement ring, giving $50 more than whatever it was pawned for. And then they're buying 750 franc dresses. Now, so was that her plan then? Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just thinking maybe Laura had the money because she hadn't been able to buy the ring back.
Maybe. Oh yeah, that's true. She does have a lot of money.
Now she's given that up as a lost cause, so she just has the money.
But what was I gonna say? Now I lost it.
Plan.
What's that?
You were saying something about Kate's plan.
Kate's plan, which is to Oh yeah, she gets the person to take off her gloves. She wraps it up and hides it, and then she has to. What happens after that? I had a point that I
First
lost
of all,
now.
she manages to. She pretends to Nico that she was meant to be meeting someone else and their car broke.
That's it. That's what
Now,
I'm trying to find out.
she's all dressed up with nowhere to go. Oh no, she's totally honeypotting him. And
But Nico
like,
was
hey,
Nico
that's
supposed to
a-
go with Maggie? Did Maggie not go, or what? What happened?
no, because Maggie's going out with that Irish guy
Right.
that she played darts with in the pub in London. And he is now in Monte Carlo. And he probably flew on her plane. And I don't understand how any of this works. But she like, because Kate sees her organizing the date. And she thinks it's with Nico, but it's not. It's with the Irish guy. And Maggie gets her to like promise that if she doesn't go on a date with Nico, that Kate will do all of the egg orders for breakfast in first class for like 2.5 weeks so that Maggie doesn't have to do it. And then it turns out she wasn't going on that date anyway. So well played, Maggie. And so, yeah, so she manages to get Nico to take her to the thing. And then when the woman turned up and she was wearing gloves, I was like, no, she's wearing that. It was such a brilliant little thing. Yeah. And then when she thought to order red wine, again, like it was brilliant thinking on her feet. And she obviously spilled the red wine on her glove, gave the woman a glass of soda water. I can't think, tonic, whatever it is, that is good with stains and that sort of thing. And she says, oh, we use it all the time on the plane. And so she gets her to hold that glass. And then, like, I was like, gloves, red wine, quick thinking, Kate. But the bag she took was this big. And then she, like, stuffed this massive glass into it. And she could barely close it. And then she goes back to the hotel and has a lovely bit of Nookie with Nico.
Wow.
And the bag is on the bed and it's closed and it's perfect. And I'm like, there's no bloody glass in there. That's not in there.
Well, I was going to say, like, she's a very good spy. She's very much like James Bond, including the whole sleeping with the person that you're supposed to be working with, right? That's a James Bond thing to do. And it's totally what she's doing now. She's living the spy life. She's having a great time. But now it looks like they're now further involved because she goes right from the drop off with her handler, walks around the corner and says, hi, Nico. And then they go off to see something. And it's like, be a little more subtle about it. Like, just, don't go from one to the other.
Yeah, it's very good. And she's like, because I wrote down, oh, and I said, that glass is not in that bag. And then I was like, Nico dodgy? Take glass? And then I was like, nope. So he didn't take it. But I don't trust him.
No, I don't either.
Especially now that we saw him at the end of the episode and it looked like he might come back. I was like, now I definitely don't trust him.
Yeah, I think he knows that she's an agent and he is trying to get to her through whatever. He's going to try and turn her or something like that. That's going to happen, I think.
Because the way he was talking about what happened with the gloves made it sound like he knew exactly what she was doing. And I don't think she picked up on that, but I was like, he definitely sounds like he's onto her. Mm-hmm. And he would only be onto her if he knew there was, like, he knows that woman is also not the Italian woman she claims to be. Mm-hmm. So he is also in on somebody's side, but I think that he might also be a spy.
I agree.
Yes.
Ginny. Her name is Ginny.
What? The woman, the secretary.
Yes. Ginny. And it does say here, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page, it says that she is a mistress. That does say, so confirmed.
Yeah. Thank you, ever reliable Wikipedia.
Yeah. Well, at least we looked at the future.
But yes, I preferred number 5 to. I thought that was. I much preferred that.
Much more interesting, certainly story wise. Although again, I like learning more about Ted, and I definitely like the whole space race thing. But I agree, it was more. But I do miss Colette. I hope we get lots of Colette in the next episode. I'm hoping like it's all about her. Let's just
Yes.
focus on the French.
I did like the fact that towards the end of the episode when the senior VP is leaving and he's like shaking hands with Dean and he's like, if you need anything from the inside, call me. And I'm like, Dean's had enough, like he's sorted, don't worry about it. And then he's like, well, if you need anything at 35,000 feet, call me. And then he gives the card to Ginny as well. And he's like, in case you need it, you're important, you're a secretary, you might need it for him. So I'll give you my card as well. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And as they are leaving the plane, she walks just in front of Colette. And they sort of leave the plane together. And they're like Dean's two women. And I just enjoyed the fact that they were sort of together. That Colette was like, nodded goodnight to him as his little fling walked away. And yeah, so I really hope we get a lot of Colette in the next couple of episodes.
Cool.
Yes. So I still very much enjoying the series.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sort of really wondering, because I suppose that bringing in, if Nico is indeed somebody who's going to scupper Kate, that's interesting because she can't just spend the whole time being a successful spy.
Yeah. Like she's
She
gonna
bring some conflict in.
Well, they've done it pretty good. Like she kind of some gets screwed up every episode, and no matter what, like doesn't matter. Like, and it's not always her fault, but she manages to adapt really well. That's what makes her a good spy. I think is she can adapt and think quickly on her feet. So,
when they did it the first episode, when David Harbour turned out to not be the Russian guy she was meant to be setting up, but in fact her London handler, and he was like, "Don't worry," and like. We actually ask you to do will be a lot easier. And I'm like, no, it hasn't been.
That's right. He did say that, didn't he? And that was, I think, the easiest thing that she's been asked to do so far.
I think, apart from the whole not knowing what she was doing in Rangoon and Jakarta, I think that would have been the easiest if she'd taken the bloody camera with her.
Right. Because she would have, okay, I'll just pop it in here and then I'm on my way and I'm done. Right? No problem.
Then I can go and watch cockfighting with my sister.
As you do in Jakarta.
As you do, yeah. So, yeah. So that's those two episodes. And as ever, I like to ask you, what else have you been watching?
I've been watching, I kind of been going into some 90s comedies. The Drew Carey Show. Have you ever watched the Drew Carey Show?
No, I only know Drew Carey from Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, about the American version. Was he ever on the British version?
Oh, I know the British version very well. There are entire episodes of that I can tell you word for word.
Wait, he wasn't actually. He only kind of got to know it because Ryan Stiles was on the British version, right? And Ryan Stiles was on the Drew Carey Show, which I've been watching. So this is a sitcom. Drew Carey was in the 90s at this time, same time that Ryan Stiles would have been doing that. I don't know if he was just flying over there to do that and then coming back to the States. But there was a sitcom, and it's like a very, like, it's so funny because his job, he's like an HR guy at a department store, which doesn't really exist anymore. Like it's such a dated concept. And it's really interesting to watch, but it's still a lot of fun. The jokes are funny and I'm laughing. But he also, in case you don't know, he's also the host of a game show over here too. The Price is Right is what he does.
Oh, does he do The Price is Right now? Yeah, because we do that over here as well. Yeah. So
yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's been good. And then the movie I watched, actually, I just posted a video about it today, was Mortal Engines, which is on Netflix here.
Oh, is it one of those sort of dystopian YA things?
Yes, but I think it's a lot better than most of those other ones. Although I haven't seen like Maze Runner, but I think it's better than the Hunger Games. I like this. I think it's a very, very kind of a cool idea. And they have like London is a city. It's got these cities that roll around on tracks.
Oh, yes.
Very kind of a cool idea. And so London, the way it's built is like they've got this whole thing. And they, what's the dome? What's the famous dome in London? It's like
it's the Millennium Dome, but now it's the O2 Arena.
No, something else. It's an older thing. It's like an old style dome. It's like a cathedral or something. They've got very complicated.
St. Paul's.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, St. Paul's Cathedral. And so they've got this city built, and it's got like the big Union Jack on the front of when they come and they eat up the other cities, and then the very top is the dome, and then that opens up to become this big weapon. It's very, very cool. I really liked it.
I've seen Maze Runner. I watched that probably just a couple of years ago. And I've never read the books, but I did that thing where I watched the films and I was like, yeah, that's fine. And then I read like the Wikipedia entry to see what the difference was between the film and the book. And it was like, yeah, they basically took the title of the book.
Oh,
it's one of these ones where they're like, it sort of starts off the same, the concept is, and then they just ran with their own idea. And I don't like that. My friend Steph, for her birthday, she's a brilliant cross stitcher. She designs her own patterns and does brilliant things. And I found a pattern and I did it for her birthday, which was the book was better. She is always the book was better. And she and I have very different ways of approaching adaptations. I watch the film, then I read the book for background information because the book always has more in it, and then I'm never disappointed. Then I get to enjoy both, because if you read the book and then you watch the film, I think it's inevitable that you're going to be, because they can't fit everything in, and you lose your favorite side character, and they have to change things, and then directors come in and change the endings and stuff, and you're like, oh. So I just think if I watch the film first and then I read the book, I get to enjoy both. Or I read the book and then 5 years later, when I've completely forgotten what it was really about, I watch the film, and if the vibe feels the same, I'm happy with it. Because I don't remember plot points. And I remember watching Atonement and just going, oh, it just feels like the book. I don't remember what happened in the book, but it feels right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you want to watch?
I watched the Sky series of The Day of the Jackal with Eddie Redmayne and LaShawn. It was good, but I wasn't completely involved in it. But it ended in a really interesting way. But there's one plot point in it that I can't stop thinking about, and it wasn't addressed. And there's a second series, and I'm like, well, I hope it gets addressed in that. But also, I'm sort of like, I don't know if I can be bothered to watch an entire second season just to find out what that thing was about. Because it was so good. Like, it was so out of the blue, and like, I just thought it was a fantastic sort of middle climax. And then they never went in, delved into it anymore. So yeah, and they did that where like the big denouement sort of took place in the dark, and you know how they light things realistically these days, and so I just couldn't see what was happening.
Yeah, what's going on?
It's like, this is great. People are getting shot all over the place, and I don't know who they are. Yeah, but so yeah, it was good. I like Eddie Redmayne was great. Lashana Lynch was fantastic. It was a good cast. It was a solid thriller. I haven't seen the film, so I'm intrigued. And it's also based on a book. And then I was like, wait, who was Carlos the Jackal? Is this about Carlos the Jackal? And then I realised that I did the Wikipedia search, and I found out that Carlos the Jackal was called the Jackal because he had a copy of the book, The Day of the Jackal. And I was like, oh, this has all got very circular.
There's a movie called The Jackal with Bruce Willis and Jack Black.
Oh, is that about Carlos the Jackal?
That's about Carlos. Yeah.
Yeah, because there is The Day of the Jackal movie with like
Robert Redford.
No, like James Fox in it. Are you thinking of 3 Days of the Condor?
Yeah, shoot, yeah. Too many days, too many animals.
Yeah, but also that film is based on a book where it's like 6 Days of the Condor, and I'm like, what happened to the other 3 days when they made it into the movie?
We'll give you the other 3 days after this one. Then we'll make sure the movie does well. And we get
They should have
sequels.
done a sequel like the next 3 days. Oh, so yeah.
Not cool.
So that, and then today I watched the first episode of, again, a Sky series called Sweet Pea, which is based on a book, but it's about a very sort of shy, introverted girl who was bullied in school and never really got over it. And no one ever like notices her or pays any attention to her, and her boss doesn't even know her name, and like she just sort of disappears into the background. Everyone leaves the office and turns the lights out because they don't realize she's still in there, you know, and that kind of thing. And she's like, a list of people I would like to kill, and come the end of the episode she actually kills somebody, and it was like, it was so brutal, and it was so brilliant. It's very darkly funny and also very sad. But yeah, I really enjoyed that, so I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of that.
You just reminded me. I just watched the first episode of the second season of Squid Game, which is out on Netflix. Squid Game season 2, and so it's pretty brutal. It's just it's like you expect from Squid Game, like they get right into it.
I need to watch that. I did enjoy the first series very much, and I'm intrigued as to how they've even made a second series.
Well, it starts logically. It starts very logically where the last one left off, and it, you know, it just makes sense. Everything. That's what I like about the show is that how crazy all this stuff happens. It still all makes sense, like logically. So anyway, it's really good. I really like the actor who plays. I don't know his name. I can't say it. Pronounce the name. With the main character in Squid Game. He was also in the Star Wars series, The Acolyte, that came out this past summer, which was a bad show, but he was really good in it. Like, he is a good actor. So I like him. And there's some other side characters in this season of Squid Game that I really liked in this first episode anyway. I don't know if they're going to survive or not, but that's where it goes.
Don't get attached to anyone in Squid Game. We'll know.
Anyway. But yeah, that's it.
Right. Well, brilliant. And today is Monday. I know the days of the week. This time of the year, it's very difficult, but today is Monday. But we will be back on Sunday.
Correct.
We'll get back to normal and start doing Sundays again next year.
Yeah. See you next year.
See you next year. Have a good time until then.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye.